New Zealand distance runner Luke McCallum. So Luke first represented New Zealand as a junior athlete at World Cross and has since suffered a bout of injuries and I guess a few setbacks, but has returned to elite competition in the last few years and now competes at national level within New Zealand, but also working as one of the best massage therapists in New Zealand at Sports Lab in Auckland. So thank you so much for having this chat today, Luke.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, let's perhaps, obviously there's going to be people watching this that are, I guess, keen to hear your thoughts on food and nutrition and performance and that sort of thing. But also today, I guess, is about focusing a little on the disordered type eating patterns that are seeming to be on the rise in both our sport, but sport in general, more so in Oz by the sounds of it, but definitely, it's not exactly just an Australian problem.
Yeah.
So I noticed recently you've spent a few months in Kenya training with a bunch of elite athletes over there and doing a bit of massage therapy as well. Now, you've spoken quite openly about this experience that you've lost 6 kilos during that time, which, I mean, I don't know if everyone can tell your figure just by looking at your head, but you're not the type of person that can afford to lose 6 kilos.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that when I've talked about it, people, and to be fair, I've made a few comments in the past where I could never imagine being able to lose any more weight. Like if you were to think of how heavy I was before versus what I got down to, it was basically my weight, which I would have considered to be relatively healthy for a distance runner at my level. And then the context of the joke was, I don't understand how people get down to the weight of an equestrian, which was roughly around 50 kg, which is what I ended up getting down to. And I couldn't imagine when I looked at myself how I could have lost that, and unfortunately I did, and I kind of experienced quite a few negative side effects of that, and a lot of those came from like how it came about was partially living at altitude and not getting the same amount of nutrition that I'd grown up and used to having back in New Zealand, and then also I ended up getting sick for quite a few times, which was a big part of the problem as well. And then because of losing so much weight so quickly, I mean, I think I was able to weight-wise bounce back, but I'm still kind of having a few side effects of losing so much weight.
Yeah,
for sure.
So how integral has the team around you been in, I guess, your return to NZ and return to health been?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting coming back. Well, when I first realised it was happening, like I had a few people over there that they would talk to me about it, and we would talk quite openly about it because we were all kind of relatively going through a similar thing where our weight was slowly dropping away. And so we talked quite openly about it, and we were, before anyone back here knew, we were quite concerned about it. And then once a few conversations that we were having kind of trickled back to my coach and a few of the other team that I work with and a few friends that work in the field, a few people actually reached out to me saying, like, with concern of how I was looking by photos and videos that I was posting on social media. But it was a really big learning experience, just because, I mean, I'd been to altitude before, but I hadn't been to altitude in a country that was, the nutritional availability of foods wasn't as really available as what it was to what I'm used to, or even because I was in America, up in Flagstaff, and so the food that you can get there is obviously a lot more similar than what's available in Kenya. But the team that was around me, they kind of very much kept me in check. And a lot of the things that helped was being able to explain the likely symptoms of losing so much weight, and they were things that I actually experienced.
Yeah. Do you think being a health professional, it helped you sort of see those signs a bit earlier than perhaps someone else might have picked them up?
Well, I do think so, and I think that the interesting part of it was, it was something that I still kind of try to wrap my head around, is I'm quite openly critical of other people that have these teams that are going through similar things, and it was a bit of a humbling experience when you go through yourself. I definitely, and because of that, I could obviously see a lot of the symptoms, and I knew it wasn't good, but it was hard when I was there, and I just didn't have things available to me that would made it easily to put on a lot of weight. But it kind of got to a point that I got quite desperate just because of how low it got. So I was trying to put on weight as quickly as possible. That's hard as well.
Yeah, definitely, especially when you're doing such high volumes of training.
Yeah, and also just being up at altitude, physiologically, it's just day-to-day living, it's harder. And I mean, I was there for work as well, and so I have a physical job, so it's a combination of a number of different factors that let it become so much of a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking a little bit earlier, but a lot of people, I think, when they think of eating or disorder type eating patterns, or rapid losses in weight that are problematic in a sporting context, many people think of women. And I was chatting to Madeline Hills about this as well, and she said a lot of athletes or coaches will say, oh yeah, that's a woman's problem, but actually it affects quite a number of men as well. So I think it's really valuable to have these sorts of chats, and I guess put it out there that men also need to be wary of these sorts of issues popping up as well.
Yeah, and I think for me personally, one of the things that which kind of stemmed from it, and I think the only reason I was so aware of it happening was my mental health was all over the place. Like, I'd get annoyed at someone for being just in the room rather than anything that was saying, and that is one of the symptoms of not getting enough nutrients. So that was really interesting, and I think that was probably the first telling sign for me personally. I was like, things aren't right, just because I'd done so much work in that area. And then it was the obvious things of just like, like running shorts weren't fitting the same way, socks weren't fitting the same way, and it was things like that. And I was just like, I really didn't like it. And it was interesting when talking to a few different people about it that have gone through similar experiences. Their reasoning for it was like, I mean, obviously performance is part of it, but body image is another part of it. But for me personally, it made me the body image that it gave me was quite bad. Like, I really didn't like it, which is, that was interesting. Usually, I have a relatively good thought process around how I look, but that was rough. And it was kind of the correlation between weight and performance didn't fit the same thing as what I thought it would have, or how it usually presents in people as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As a massage therapist and working alongside a lot of physios as well, I imagine you'd also see the other end of the injuries and illnesses and stuff like that often come about with such extreme drops in weight. How do you, I guess, go about that issue with athletes, because it's often a touchy subject?
I think it's a touchy subject because I think people are afraid of stopping and not being able to achieve their goals, and I think that in order to be the best athlete, they just have to continue to push it's kind of a similar mindset that comes alongside like no pain, no gain. It's kind of you have to suffer to be good. And I'm starting to see the trend of people kind of moving away from that. And I think it's where people are looking at, you actually need to be healthy in order to be able to put the demands on your body that high intensity training, such as running or whatever sport requires. And there are so many different factors that come into that. And I think with people currently where they're having these chronic effects of these, like, not necessarily eating type disorders but like with your relative energy deficit, I think it's those hard conversations that we need to be having with people, because I mean, people can kind of flog themselves for a couple of years and get good results, but I mean, people want to be in sports for a long period of time. It's actually, if you're getting from that, say, that national level and wanting to break into the elite level, it's a long-term thing that actually has to be.
Yeah, definitely.
A long-term approach is like, to be able to break into that, especially in, say, like my sport, you need to be well and truly healthy into your late 20s, early 30s with half marathons. It's pretty rare to get into that realm if you're flogging yourself when you're a teenager and then flogging yourself in your early 20s when you were typically robust. But it's not really it's kind of that when more bad patterns are put in place. So I kind of think it's people need to find teams that are actually prepared to have these hard conversations with them, and openly talk about, like, in women talking about their period, but in guys talking about mental health, how they're feeling, because I think, I mean, typically in New Zealand, it's not something that we do very well. I'm not sure what it's like in Australia, but
no, it's not the same, really.
Yeah. But I think it's things like that where people internalize it, but being able to have people in your corner that can have those harder conversations is really, really important. And I think partially that comes down to, I mean, often the athletes are quite young, but there's, I think, the coach's job, and also like the health professionals that they surround themselves with, that don't necessarily have short-term aspirations. Is kind of looking at the bigger picture and treating the athlete as a person, not just something and give them results.
Definitely. And I think that's a really good point as well about the relative energy deficiency, in that not everyone with issues necessarily has an eating disorder or even disorder type eating patterns. It's just that they haven't actually put in the strategy correctly to get enough food in to meet their requirements, because it can be difficult when you're doing that amount of work.
Yeah, I think it is a challenge, and a few of the people that I talk to have had conversations around this. The hypothesis is it's just, I mean, there's not as much nutrients in food as what, if it's not like organically grown. You could, I mean, to eat healthy, it can be expensive depending on where you are and how much. So there's a lot of other factors that go into it. So yeah, and then there's the whole thing of, like, people think in order to lose weight you have to eat less, and it's not necessarily the case. So there's a lot of issues that go further than just getting nutrition. So I find that's definitely, I think, something that we see as a barrier, and it's a big barrier in Auckland where it is such an expensive place to live. People cut corners, and nutrition is sometimes a thing that they find that they can cut a few corners, but they'll probably find if they do that better, they'll be able to save money in places. But it's an interesting, like, balance between, like, finances and nutrition and how it affects performance.
Definitely. And I think because a lot of the athletes tend to only work part-time, or perhaps the students as well, and it does definitely become difficult at times to, particularly in sports such as athletics, where funding or sponsorship sort of opportunities are limited and sort of rare. So
I mean, things like that makes it difficult, but I think I mean, it's one of the challenges, and it's the only way that I think that will change is if people, or through education around topics like this, of how actually more beneficial it is to.
Is there a staple dish that you like to cook in order to, I guess, optimize performance, or just generally like?
I'm someone that I personally, I'm quite a basic eater. I'm kind of like, food is something that I see that gets me fuel.
Yeah.
And I'm often not happy if I've like had this really delicious meal, but it hasn't given me the nutrients or the energy that I need from it. So I wouldn't go to say that I've got something that I'm like, oh, that's my signature dish that I always cook. Is I actually eat mainly the same types of food. And I'm kind of notorious for not changing it up drastically. But it's based off, I find that that's what I can do to, one, get me through my work day, but also allow me to train as much as I do as well. I kind of, it often is like chicken, like, and a lot of vegetables. I think it's trying to get as much non-processed food as possible is my main goal. But in saying that, I think it's about balance as well. And so you can have a really strict diet, but if you don't allow yourself to waver from it from time to time, you'll struggle to stick to it long term. So that's kind of my philosophy, is like around, it's more balanced rather than super strict. If I know the type of person I am, and if I'm too strict, I won't like it, and I'll rebound in the other way.
Yeah, no, that's really
good. Think back to junk-free June.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just actually going to bring up your workplace's Fat Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Know about that. Do you want to give everyone a little insight?
So the place that I work, I mean, we're a sports clinic, mainly with physiotherapists, massage therapists, and podiatrists, and we have every Friday. It's the only time of the week that everyone is in the clinic at the same time, and so everyone comes together for lunch, and someone's responsibility is to bring in a cake, which hence Fat Friday is how it started about 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago. And it's usually has to be something, it's got to be sweet, it's got to be cake or slice or something like that. And it's a good juxtaposition of everyone else who typically lives very healthy lifestyles, and then once a week it's like a treat yourself, got yourself through the week type of thing.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a real sort of celebration of food as well. Everyone has lunch together, and
and it's always celebrating, like a good celebration of food and doing interesting things with food.
Love it.
Always cake.
Pretty
or cheesecake.
Yeah. Now, do you have a lot of athletes have, post-training or post-competition recovery, I guess, strategies that they use? And obviously from a physical aspect, you've probably got that down pat, but from a food side of things, is there anything that you sort of have to do after every training session? Or
I mean, for me personally, it's like I just have to eat straight away. Like I will find that if I don't, like the energy that I have or am able to get back it just takes a lot longer for me to be able to recover. And so often it's kind of having like simple things, just like having a protein smoothie or having eggs on toast, or a combination of both of those is my go-to, because it's quick, simple, and it can be quite a lot of, I don't want to talk about calories because I don't necessarily think that's good, but there's a lot of energy within that, and there's a lot of different sources of macronutrients within that as well, which I think is beneficial. You can tell me I'm wrong, but
it's
but I think there's kind of, I think the research has like, it must have something like for 30 minutes after exercising, and I'm usually pretty quick. Yeah, definitely within that. Otherwise, it kind of makes the rest of the day, whether I'm training in the morning or at night, but quite a struggle if I don't.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that window seems to change a little bit every time they do some more research on it. But
yeah,
ultimately the main goal is as soon as possible after exercise. So.
Yeah, and usually it's whether or not, if I'm like far away from home, I'll take food with me, or if I'm training even from home, I can make something straight away. So
yeah, nice.
It's whether or not it's half an hour or not, it's as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
and then I'll probably have something a few hours later as more of a normal meal rather than just to get food back into the body.
Yeah,
which I see that as being.
That's definitely a good recovery tool. Absolutely, yeah. Now, what about pre-race more so than training, because this seems to vary quite substantially between everyone, particularly that was interviewed. It's been quite interesting insights here. Do you have anything, I guess, specific that you have to have because you know it'll sit well, or are you pretty relaxed?
I'm not an overly superstitious person apart from what I had before a race.
Okay.
And it's usually, I usually get up 3 hours or have a final meal about 3 hours before a race. Often the races start like 7 a.m., 8 a.m., so I'm up quite early. Usually I probably often would have peanut butter, honey, banana on toast, with coffee. When I was younger, I used to get quite nervous and actually struggle to eat quite a lot. But as I've got older, my anxiety around races isn't as high, and so I've been able to eat a lot more before a race, and that's actually helped quite a lot with. Obviously, if you eat, you have more energy, and your races can go a lot better. So, strange correlation. But I think and often I'll pretty much just have. That's kind of what I have. I'd go to say, I have that before races, but that's before most training as well. Because it's something that I find that fills me up enough if I have to eat a long time before training, but also I can eat like peanut butter and toast and have that as something in my stomach, and then just go straight out the door as well. So I know a long way out from training, but also close to training is not going to upset my stomach.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, don't think about this too much, but in one word, and the first word that comes to your mind ideally, what does food mean to you?
Fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. I've talked to quite a few people about this, and it's a strange anecdote to use, but kind of I think you can, like, if you go out for dinner and you spend, I don't know, like $30 or $40 on a meal and it doesn't fill you up, and then you kind of feel better because on the way home you have to go to McDonald's to get, like, that's kind of a joke that I talk about, but I would much prefer to have something that is able to fuel me rather than tastes ridiculously good. That's just me personally. I know other people don't have that same opinion, but I think, just not a happy camper if I don't have enough food or have enough fuel. So yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a real thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
No, cool. Now, if you were stranded on an island, and I know that New Zealand is an island, but a small little island, we'll say, and there are only 3 foods available that you could eat, and we'll assume that you don't have to back it up with, having to run a half marathon or something after staying on this island. But what would be the 3 foods that you would want to choose?
I'd probably go like chicken, kurma, and broccoli.
Okay, nice. I feel like
Is
I
that-
should probably just mention to any Aussies watching this, cucumber is sweet potato.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, that is what I would say is like one of the basic meals that I have on the regular. And I'm yet to get sick of it. So I imagine if I'm stranded, I'm not going to get sick of it. So
that's pretty good theory.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Kind of covers most groups as well. So yeah.
True. Yeah. Definitely sticking with your fuel. Food is fuel.
Yeah. Oh, it's a common theme, right?
Yeah. Although most people so far have included something really sweet in there too.
Yeah. Nah, I don't think I'd. I think the only time where I feel like I need something sweet is because I've had sweet food.
Yeah, that's true actually.
So
the more you eat
the more I eat it, the more I feel like I need it. So I feel like if I didn't have it, I'd probably be okay.
Yeah.
And I'd probably more care about survival rather than a sweet fix.
Yeah, cool. Love it. Now, do you utilise supplements at all? And I know you sort of touched on protein sort of smoothies or shakes. Is that included within that category overall?
Yeah, that's probably the only one that I do use. Mainly just because it's simple and it's easy.
Yeah.
I haven't looked too much into other supplements, to be honest, but I kind of think if you can get it from nutrients or like normal food, you should. But in saying that, everyone has, I think, like different food requirements, so that's where supplements come in. I think I don't necessarily understand them well enough to dive down into it, how they might be beneficial for me. But I mean, the only time I've ever taken anything greater than just protein, I was taking a lot of like iron supplements. I was taking a lot of vitamin C when I was overseas in Kenya. One for just because of blood levels change quite a lot when you're living it so high, and just because of that as well, you're more likely to get sick, which unfortunately I did. So that's where like vitamin C and can be a benefit. But I mean, back in New Zealand, protein based just because I work full time and training kind of has to fit around that, and so sometimes something like a protein shake is easier to cook up or mix up than a proper meal. So
no, fair enough. Yeah, I think especially in New Zealand, you've got such good access to really fresh, readily available produce that it's definitely not difficult to be able to get what you need from food.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely not like against the idea of it. It's just I'm not sure that I need it, so I haven't dived into it any further.
Yeah.
So
Well, good. Now, is there one thing that you wish, Luke, as a junior athlete, or perhaps if you feel like you've had a really good journey, that just a piece of wisdom that you've learned throughout your time as an athlete that you could pass on to someone that's perhaps coming through the ranks now?
I probably, I mean, two main. I'd go say two. I've got two, and one of them is like not always doing more is better. So it's kind of like less is more is a cliche, and I think that comes down to that kind of not trying to do everything, trying to pick one of or a few things to do rather than trying to do everything all at once. Running or exercise sport it's a long-term thing that we need to be able to do, and if you do too much too soon, eventually something is going to stop you. Often that can come in bouts of illness and come like different forms of sickness, injury, where usually we just put it down to that's just bad luck. But I think people need to start looking at it as a causative of nature, and then there's an effect of it as well. I train hard, and if something, like if I get an injury, I have now learned to be like, well, what have I done that's caused that to happen?
Yeah.
And is it not getting enough recovery? Is it other stresses going on in my life? Things like that, which I think is really important. And then probably the other one is making sure you look after your mental health as well. Because I think mental health is something that can impact our performance and our training more than we like to think that it does. And so having an ability to know when things aren't going great, and yes, sometimes running is a good fix for that and sometimes it's not. So not using running as a thing to cover up for stresses of our life, because eventually it'll get to a point, like I said before, you'll just have to stop, and then there's a downward spiral even further. So kind of using as an example of just trying to bring that to the forefront of the conversation as well, and that's where treating an athlete as a whole person rather than just someone who gets results. That's kind of always my challenge to people.
I think that's a really good point too, with, a lot of athletes do use their sport or, running as their mental health outlet. But then what happens, ultimately when you're training at that intensity, there's bound to be an injury at some point in the career. And a lot is that that's when things really start to rear their head, because they haven't developed any other strategies to cope, and they can no longer.
And I think that's where other issues come about. Running is an addictive sport, and that's where you find that people will pick up other things that aren't necessarily good addictions, whether or not it's other forms of exercise, or you can go, another one is food addiction, is alcohol, drug addiction, where there is a lot of things that people use to cover up, but it's trying to get people aware that can happen, and again, be preventative before you have to be reactive, because it's easier in the short term to be reactive, but once you're trying to get on top of it, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, definitely. No, brilliant. That's some really good insights. Thank you.
No problem.